Ooh la la! What do we got here? We got a Momo Montecarlo with the red stitching. I've had this packed away for months, hoping that this car was going to be running and driving and boosting, but we're finally getting around to putting it in because we have the whole car taken apart. We're going to take the front bumper off next to install the heat exchanger, which we still have yet to order. But I have to do wiring underneath here. What better opportunity to then put in our Momo steering wheel? So we got OEM parts right here, a whole bunch of them. These are all the screws, little screws to hold the steering wheel to the hub. This is the OEM NSX R steering hub. So if you guys ever see the Momo for the NSX R, which is like $1,000, they use this hub. Because I'm not spending $1,000 on a Momo steering wheel, I'm gonna spend $200 on a Momo steering wheel. It's literally almost the same exact thing. Definitely much better than that OEM junk, because I hate the way the car feels driving with that OEM wheel. At least with this, we got some nicer bolstering and no airbag, so we die like a real man. We gotta take off these lower and upper covers as well so that the clock spring can be removed. We don't use this anymore because the hub will then sit flush against the covers and it'll look kind of like that. There's a couple screws that hold it in. There's some up here and one there, and probably some on the other side as well. So we got the SRS completely out, bunch of clips, some screws. Now we can do all the wiring that we need to do, and we can test fit the hub onto here. Essentially, it's gonna go in like that. So now it sits flush up against the cover. We had to create an aluminum bracket back there, so that way we can run a positive to the underside of the yellow harness down there, and that way it makes contact with the back of the hub. All right, moment of truth. Let's see if the horn works. Yo, there we go. Love it. We changed out the fuse wire here. It was a smaller gauge than the output side, and not sure why they did that, but it was like 12 gauge on one side, 10 gauge on the other side. So I just got a new fuse holder, 10 gauge directly to the block. This is all connected to the battery, the starter, alternator, and then this runs to the fuel pump relay. We just got some things in the mail, some Works brand new fuel rails to replace the OEM fuel rails. And this is what we need to get enough fuel into this engine to make plenty of power. We're going for over 500 wheel horsepower on 93, and the banjo fittings on the stock rails are so tiny, I could see why that there's no fuel getting back into the return line at a certain point. These fuel rails are really, really nice. Check these out. So these are billet, aluminum. Obviously there's two fuel rails. So here's the other one. Comes with a 1/8 MPT in case you want to put some sort of pressure sensor or pressure gauge. Just a direct comparison of the stock fuel rail versus the Works one. So here's the stock again, you know, very ugly, very restrictive, not a lot of fuel going in there. The diameter of the inside is just way smaller. I mean, look at that. The inner diameter is like at least double the size of the stock ones. So these are gonna flow up to 1,000 liters per hour, and that's per Works. So we have the injectors already lubricated, the O-rings, put them in, and then we can lubricate the bottom ones, and then we can test fit it onto the intake manifold. So we have the front fuel rail completely bolted in. We had to actually remove these studs that are part of the intake manifold because this OEM sensor there, I believe that's some sort of map sensor. If you have the studs already in the intake, you can actually slide the rail down without hitting the top of the sensor. And if you take the sensor out and you put the rail on, you can't put that last screw in on the bottom to bolt it back down. We use the included hardware, which they give you some of these nice bolts, new hardware, and it sits flush here. Otherwise, these studs stick out like ½ an inch if you just put the rail on. It turns out that the ends are not 6AN, as Deechworks told me. They look like 8AN, so we're gonna have to get some 8AN ORBs to 6AN adapter, male into the female. So for example, this is a 6AN return line, and this is a 6AN feed line. We're gonna have to probably shorten this and create a new fitting from that end, wrap it around, have our pull stamper, and then into the rear rail. It's actually a really gorgeous day today, so we're gonna work on removing the front bumper, so when the signs of speed heat exchanger shows up, we can start test fitting it. So we gotta take out a couple bolts here and there, bolt here and there, and then there's a couple nuts holding in the bumper from the inside of the fender liner on both sides.
Meanwhile,
it was 2 nuts on the inside of each fender liner plus 1 bolt, and on the bottom there was a couple bolts, and then the 4 up here, and then you just unplug the bulbs, and then there's 1 wiring harness at the bottom. I think this is the ambient temp sensor. So now you guys can see how small the heat exchanger is right there. It's basically an oil cooler. So we're gonna take that out, and then the new signs of speed one is gonna take up this whole entire section, all of this. I think it's 26 inches long, about 6 or 7 inches tall, and 2 inches thick. We have to take off this dryer bottle. It's held in by 2 bolts, and I think we're gonna have to trim some sort of bracket. Like this bottle, I think, goes a little up, and then we trim off the bottom of this bracket here. I'm really curious who built this car in the first place. Well, this could make for a nice oil cooler or power steering cooler. What's going on, guys? Happy Friday. We're continuing this project, and this is all one video, but if you guys can't tell already, this is taking over the course of 3 weeks now for just this video. I really only have time to work on this car Fridays and Saturdays and a little bit of Sundays at the moment, and put in a couple hours at a time, but I've just been super busy. But we got all the parts that we need to really put this car back together, get it running. So let's show you guys what we got. So firstly, this is the new heat exchanger for the intercooler. This mounts up in the front of the car, in front of the radiator. This is a signs of speed unit. It has all the brackets already welded on, direct fit for the NSX, and this was at 400 bucks. It's a lot more than I wanted to spend, but there's no other company that makes heat exchangers, and I could have bought a universal one, but then I would have had to build the brackets myself and whatnot. I don't have a TIG welder. I've never welded aluminum before, so I would have just spent the extra money and had a bolt-in fitment. But the welds on this are really nice. It's a quality piece. It's the tube and fin style, so it does have better dissipation for heat, and it's got some 5/8 inch barbs on here for hose. So we bought some new hose for this, and we're gonna mount it up directly to our heat exchanger tank. This is what was in there before. So you can clearly see that this thing was like half the size. This is not a new piece, but we did get it back from the fabricator. We sent it out to have this radiator neck installed, so that way we can use it as a fill point and also to bleed it of air. We got some other parts in here. This is from Jordan Industries. This is actually a main relay adapter. So on this car, the main relay sits behind the driver. It's like a little box this big, and it's made by Mitsubishi. They cost around $70 to buy from Japan. And if it fails, your car is inoperable, the fuel pump, the ECU, none of it works. And we just got this from Jordan Distributors. So it's a relay adapter, so it converts the wiring harness from the factory car harness for the relay, and it goes to a regular 4-pin relay that you can buy at any hardware store or auto store. So this makes it super cheap and more reliable in the event that your main relay goes. You can just carry another relay, pop it in, and you're on your way. The other cool thing is that it gives you a kill switch for the main relay. So you can hide this anywhere in your car that you know. I'm not gonna tell you where the kill switch is gonna be on this car, but every time I flip this switch, whoever tries to steal my car isn't gonna be able to start it up. Fuel pump's not gonna work, ECU's not gonna work. They're just gonna have to roll it away. Hose barbs, this is adapters to convert the 1/2-inch hoses that we're using for the heat exchanger to the 5/8 inch hose that we just bought. We also got a whole bunch of vibrant fittings. So we have some AN fittings for the finishing the fuel rail. And we also got this other piece from Radium. This is a fuel pulse damper, and it goes in line of the fuel hoses. And basically what this does, it's a little block this big. We're gonna put some fittings on either end of this, and it's gonna go like right there, and hopefully it fits. What that does, and I'm trying to explain this the best way as possible. Inside the fuel system, we have injectors. They're pumping, they're called pulsing. They're pulsing fuel into the intake manifold, one at a time. And if you have large enough injectors, they actually kind of create like turbulence or disturbance inside the fuel rail. So there's kind of like fuel just going back and forth, and it's creating a lot of vibration and things like that. What this does is it dampens all the pulses between your injectors, so you have like a smoother flow of fuel going through your system. So we just got, a ton of vibrant fittings, a whole bunch of them. Vibrant's the best stuff. When it comes to fluid and air delivery and fabrication, you can almost never go wrong with Vibrant. Never had an issue with their fittings leaking or anything like that. Putting the hoses together and tightening the fittings, everything is really high quality. I've bought cheap fittings before, and they literally just bent and snapped off. Like, that's how cheap and thin whatever metal they were using, aluminum. But no, Vibrant's great. I've used all Vibrant stuff on my 1,000 wheel horsepower super build and never had an issue. Deechworks is also great. They focus more on fuel delivery instead of fabrication. But again, when it comes to fittings and fuel rails, fuel filters, Radium, Deechworks, Vibrant, all top-notch stuff. This is the DJI Osmo Pocket 3. If you guys are into action cameras and vlogging, you guys know the hype going on with this camera. It's a handheld gimbal camera that you can flip between landscape to vertical on the fly. And you just rotate the screen, and it actually changes the aspect ratio 9:16 to 16:9. Instead of lugging around my huge camera and mic, I'm gonna probably be using this from now on. It includes a clip-on mic too, so I think this is gonna work really well for the videos that I create, automotive, travel, whatever it might be, cooking and gym. So, and it's tiny. So you can bring this anywhere with you. This could be great on vacations, great for my auto repair videos. I'm excited to try this thing out. So let's get to it. All right, so we're in the front of the car. This is the dryer bottle. This is the bracket that was holding it in. I took it off because we have to cut off the excess tab right here. All this. All right, so we cut that bracket and we raised it about 1 inch. So it was really easy. This is like super thin aluminum. And there we have it. One bolt goes on the bottom bracket there, We can probably even lower the dryer just a tad bit. 2 brackets, one there and one there. And it's super sturdy. What I'm gonna do, since these are 5/8 fittings, I got some 5/8 fuel hose. This is super cheap. It was like, I think, 20 bucks for 20 feet, something like that. I really love how clean this looks. We got all the hoses mounted in place. Right to the motor, straight to the intercooler. It's a perfect amount of gap between the radiator support and the frame. It's literally perfect. I'm glad I spent the money to get the direct fit. Literally headache free, super easy install. Just got done mounting back the intercooler. So there's AN hose there, AN hose there. We just have to tighten those up. There's also a bracket down there. See that bolt? It's not focusing. And then there's a bolt down there, kind of a pain to get to, but everything is secured. The Vangin is clamped on. The only thing we need to do is put the charge pipe back onto the clamp down there, and that's really it. Before, we didn't have a fill neck and air could be trapped up here. So now this is really nice, and this is the best spot to put it because it's away from the firewall. If you put it here, it probably would block access to your wires and might even touch. Over here is a good spot because it doesn't really get in the way of anything, and it's in a good, easy location. And I can still tighten it from down here, and there's still room to put the strut bar across, and it comes off. These are a lot bigger than like the traditional Japanese radiator caps. When I first got it, I was like, oh boy, what kind of radiator cap does this use? But it's just American. There we go. And it's not much of an eyesore. We can always get like a nicer cap down the line, but for me, it doesn't bother me. We actually have to wait for a couple more fuel fittings to put on the damper because the damper is too big and doesn't really fit perfectly there. So I'm gonna mount the damper like right here, and I'm gonna have a 90 bend off the rail into the damper and then just run a short piece of 3/8 hose to the other fuel rail, and it's gonna be perfect. Got that good old Asian vehicle coolant. You can use this for the radiator or the heat exchanger. Look at that, good stuff. So we really gotta see what the fluid capacity is of the core itself. We don't wanna overflow it, but we do wanna get it so that it almost comes over. We just got done bleeding the whole entire heat exchanger system. We installed a check valve here so that way air doesn't go backwards, that water can only flow in one direction, and that this doesn't create some sort of vacuum and pulls air back into the system. We're also gonna change out this filter there. That blue filter you see with the rust on the surface, that's like a $3 AutoZone STP filter. I'm not sure why they cheaped out and put that in there. I actually picked up a couple Wix filters. These are Man-Hummel filters, and I think this specific one is built in Korea. Yeah, South Korea. So we'll go with it. Wix has always been making nice filters. Never had an issue with Wix, and surprisingly, I got these from Home Depot. $11 each and free shipping. And Home Depot had the best price. To put on the shroud here for the heat exchanger, we do have to trim it. I trimmed off this section here so that the hose can fit through. I also trimmed the sides down there and down there, so that way it will clear in between the sides, and also for the hose, which already seemed like it was trimmed before. And it's important to have this because it guides the air into the heat exchanger instead of around the heat exchanger, and also for the radiator too. So this is really important for proper cooling. Gonna run the headlights, run the frame, plastic shield that I already cleaned. You feel a lot better when you put this stuff together when it's a little bit cleaner. We're almost done putting the steering wheel back together. I had to get all the covers on. Top and bottom are screwed on, and this bottom tray is also done. We need to put the hub on. We already put some copper grease on there so that it doesn't make any scraping noises against the aluminum bracket that we made. And we also got a brand new OEM nut. Now we torque it down to 36 foot-pounds. Now we can mount the steering wheel and the horn to the hub. We even got 6 brand new OEM screws for the hub. These are made in Italy, just like the steering wheels. Threading this in. Now we got 5 more. Let's get another screw in here. This looks so much better than the OEM steering wheel. The bumper and the horns aren't attached right now, so that's why it's not beeping. But I can hear the relay clicking, so we know it's good. I feel like at some point I should do a maybe a flip up from Works Bell. And there we have it. I think it looks beautiful in here.